And today's topic is a very important one, very close to my heart, and critical to address collectively, especially in today's society where we're so focused on productivity and efficiency and technology. And sometimes we seem to forget that we're all human, with a full set of emotions and struggles, and we're all in the pursuit of happiness. So it's a collective effort, and we can help support each other in this journey. Um, so I'll like to introduce now Angel Beyde, who's going to be our fabulous facilitator this evening. She's the Equity and Outreach Director at the Ecological Farmers Association of Ontario, a master gardener, educator, advocate for social and food justice, and overall a very inspiring woman, which has so much to offer to this world and which we're very happy to collaborate with. So Angel, take it from here, and we'll have our speakers introducing themselves shortly. Thanks so much and enjoy.
Great, thank you. So nice to see some familiar names on the screens. I'm very happy to be here. I'm coming today from Crawford Purchase Territory in Eastern Ontario. I live on a small farm, 8 acres near Alexandria. I care deeply about farmer mental health. I worked in a mental health supporting social enterprise for many years, and I just saw the importance of taking care of the people who take care of the earth. And this is something I think that a lot of folks in cities may be feeling a little bit disconnected from or not sure how to support. And I was really thrilled and inspired that Regeneration Canada brought together such an amazing group of speakers to, I guess, perhaps make this a little bit more human and a bit more understandable in terms of what we can do as eaters, as growers, to support each other and support ourselves to make this challenging time a little healthier and a little more connected and better supported. So without further ado, I'd love to turn it over to Carly and Erin and to Zsofia to introduce themselves. Would our farmers like to go first?
Sure. We are Carly and Aaron Godard, and we have Snowy Mountain Farm. We're in the Similkameen Valley of the Smeltmix people, and we bought the farm 2021. Feels like 2001. So we've been doing this for almost 3 years, and yeah, we've got 2 little girls that came along with us to the farm, and a dog, 3 cats, and a lot of chickens.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else? You can tell what kind of farm, I guess.
It's yeah. So the kind of farm is an orchard predominantly. We have around 70 varieties of orchard fruit. And we also have some grapevines that are growing, newly planted, and some land that isn't planted. Our total plantings are 12 acres of orchard and 4 vines, and then some other kind of wildland. And yeah, I think that's like a quick intro, but.
Okay, great. So, hi everyone. So, as I said before, my name is Zsofia Mendly-Zambo. I'm a researcher and PhD candidate in health policy and equity at the School of Health Policy at York. And so, what I'm really excited to talk to everybody about today is this work that I did alongside the National Farmers Union on farmer mental health, which we were really excited and lucky to have released with the Canadian Centre for Policy Alternatives. So before I get into that, I'm going to talk a little bit about what we learned from that research in this webinar. And then later, we will talk a little bit about our policy recommendations. So just Briefly, I just want to acknowledge that I'm currently in Chichoke, Montreal, situated in the traditional territory of the Kanien'kehá:ka. For sake of time, because I'm so late, I'm going to leave this up here, but I'm going to continue to the next slide, which is focusing on farmer mental health. So what I'd like to do now is just paint a little bit of a picture about the farmer mental health situation right now, for those who may not know what's currently happening. It's recently come into the attention from research that farmers' mental health is on decline and is struggling. So research from Angel Beyde and colleagues in 2019 found that 57% of farmers met the criteria for anxiety, 45% had met the criteria for high stress, and 35% met the criteria for depression. And what's really important about these findings is that these rates are higher than the rest of the Canadian population, and they're higher compared to other farmers in other countries as well. So this has expectedly gotten the attention of the media. So we've seen lots of news press from Canadian media and French media as well, and in addition has gotten the attention from federal government, as they did a working report. It's on the next slide there. They did a standing committee on the issue of farmer mental health. And also we have lots of work from grassroots organizations and farm organizations. So the next slide is just an example of one. Before I move on, I just want to check in. Everyone can hear me okay, and I'm not speaking outrageously fast?
Perfect.
Perfect, thanks. Okay, so this slide is an example of sort of what we saw as being the current approach to dealing with farmer mental health in Canada. So this is an infographic that was released by a farm organization. Has some basic information about farmer mental health, what the stressors are. And if you look on the bottom right-hand corner, we see this box of practicing self-care. So, and it says things like, ask for help and offer help, set aside time to disconnect from technology, talk to someone. And these are all really important things that anybody with mental health, those struggling with mental health can do, stress, anxiety. But unfortunately, what we found was that the focus of the messaging about mental health really consistently stays at this sort of level of like, you're having high stress, this is what you as the individual can do. And it really makes the responsibility on the individual to like deal with like all the stresses that they face on their own. And again, there's a lot of place for it, especially with campaigns to reduce stigma, because talking about having mental health in a community that doesn't talk about it is really important. But we wanted to, and when I say we, me and the mental health working group of the NFU, really wanted to understand, okay, so what can we do at like a higher level, at a structural level to help farmers' mental health? Not just like take a bubble bath, but like what can we do structurally? So this led us to the report. Next slide, thank you. So with National Farmers Union Mental Health Working Group, we wanted to better understand some of the larger structural causes of this growing crisis, and to look at really what was, the driving it. So we started this study with an in-depth literature review on farmer mental health. And so this was predominantly the work that I did. And then once we had sort of a framework of some of the issues that we were seeing in the literature, we had conversations with farmers from the NFU, from all over Canada. So we had a total of 21 farmers discussed with that. And so now I'm going to talk to you about some of the key findings we found from this research. Okay. So, and I hope the French translation is accurate. Anyways, some of the key factors we found, and there's a lot in this study, and again, it's free, so if you have time, I encourage you to read it. But really, what the key thesis of this research was that at the heart of poor farmer mental health, of stress and anxiety, is economic uncertainty and precarity. And there's a lot that's driving economic uncertainty and precarity for farms and farm workers. And this includes growing corporate concentration and consolidation, the cost price squeeze, and trade liberalization, as well as removal of marketing boards that may, or other policies that may provide some stability in their income. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the first 2 points, and I'm also going to talk about climate crisis, because this was also a really important finding of impacting on stress. Oh yeah, so sorry, I see that these were redone. Yeah, so other really important things that were found was a decline of rural areas. And this, we probably end up speaking about this because this is what happens, is happening right now in a lot of farming agricultural areas, especially as farms increase in size, which I'll explain a little bit more about. And so the decline in rural areas leads directly to a lack of social services, especially health services, but also other things like transportation and other things that people just need to have a good, sustaining life in society. And so this is also connected to an increase in social polarization. And so further discussions with farmers revealed additional themes, including racism and violence against women. And this is, interestingly, wasn't really present in the literature at this point. So, okay, great. Okay, so I'm going to now unpack a little bit this the slide of economic precarity, because we have a lot of things working together to sort of facilitate this, and there's a lot of interconnection. So just 1 second, sorry. Hi. Sorry. Sorry, okay. So there are many factors that contribute to this, but one thing that's really contributing to economic precarity is something called the cost price squeeze. So if you imagine the farmer is sort of like in the middle, and you have the cost of their inputs on one side and the price that they can sell their commodities on the other side. So on this side, where they're buying products for their farm, and this includes anything from fertilizers, chemicals, veterinary drugs, machinery, anything that they need to operate a farm, these inputs have increased so much in cost. However, on the other side, the price in which they can sell their commodities has either stayed the same, increased not very much, or even in some cases fallen. So research has shown that over the past 50 years, the price of farm inputs have increased nearly twice as fast as farm products, resulting in farm products often being sold below the cost of production. And so I heard a lot of farmers describe themselves as price takers on both sides. So they can't control the prices that they pay for inputs, and they can't control like the prices that they pay for outputs. And this is especially true when farmers are dealing with food distributors or Loblaws or grain companies. Those companies have so much power and ability to dictate the prices that the farmer can just basically take it or leave it. And because of these, diminishing margins, so the farmer in the middle, increased cost price squeeze means that the margins that they have are becoming razor thin. So in the face of having razor thin margins, one tactic has been to increase how much land you farm. So if you're only getting 30 cents for a peach, let's say, if you increase the amount of peaches you sell, then you can make a livable income. But this comes with its own set of difficulties, including increased debt load, which can cause increased subsequent anxiety, And then it also contributes to rural depopulation. And that was what we found in the findings as well. And I think it's very important to note that the cost price squeeze is a result of, or a significant contributor from corporate concentration in the food system, as there are increasingly fewer and fewer and fewer companies that either provide the inputs or either buying the outputs. So again, farms describes themselves as being price takers on both ends. And so just this next slide kind of, it does illustrate a little what I'm talking about in terms of falling margins. And so if you see on the red line, this is how much money is coming in to farms. But the blue line is how much money is being left over after taking into account costs. So in other words, in order to make, you know, a livable income, you actually have to be bringing in so much more income than you ever did before. And one of the reasons why this is no longer a crisis, as we saw in the 90s, late 90s, where farms were just losing money hand over fist, is because now a lot of the small and mid-sized farms are just gone. And a lot of these farms, in the positive here, are representing larger farms that are able to do this. Okay, so next we're going to talk a little bit about climate change. So climate change, and this may not be surprising, was really directly linked to becoming more and more important in terms of farmer mental health. It's an urgent matter for the agriculture sector, as farmers and others living in rural, remote areas really depend on the land for their livelihood. So climate breakdown in this way has negative impacts on farmer mental health. You can have a severe climate event irrevocably reduce a farmer's economic potential, resulting in stress, anxiety, and depression. And the unpredictable of weather was noted in separate research as a top stressor faced by Canadian producers. And it was discussed at length it was almost probably, if not number one, beside economic uncertainty, but again, because they're so related. So it is a site that needs immediate attention. So I'm going to stop there, but I have, thank you for putting my little son up. I do want to note that this is not all doom and gloom, because industrialized agriculture is actually a significant contributor to greenhouse gas emission. There are farming techniques that have huge potential to reduce greenhouse gases and even carbon sequestration. And this is through agroecology or agroecological practices. And we're going to talk a little bit more about this. So I just wanted to locate a site of change that is possible, and not leave it as, again, doom and gloom. Okay, so thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Zsofia. That was really informative. And I hope that graph is emblazoned in all the non-farmers' minds, because it is the very, very tough reality of making a living growing food. So yeah, at this point we have a little conversation style exchange before the second half of that presentation. And I just have sort of thematic questions that came to me as I was chatting with Carly, Erin, and Zsofia and learning more about their work. And the first one, front and center, obviously, is the financial side of the mental health stressors on the farming community. And so I wanted to say, Carly and Erin, the economics of farming, especially at the small scale family farm level, as we just saw, brings enormous pressure to your lives. I'm wondering what it looks like for you on a daily basis, trying to navigate the challenges of making a financially viable farm, while also trying to honor the regenerative and family and community values that are really at the heart of what you do and the inspiration for what you do. How do you navigate that?
Mm-hmm. Sure. Yeah, I think the first thing to say would be that to stress how much of a stress finances are. It's probably the biggest pressure we face. And of course that kind of trickles down into family life, our relationship, and the more stress that brings, the harder it is to navigate family life. So it's definitely the biggest. And I would kind of reiterate what Zsofia was saying. Our land costs are extremely high, and we didn't come at this with a lot of money or inherit land. So we had to buy land and kind of put every cent we had on the line for it. And just with a even recession now and increased interest rates, land costs can be like a big pressure. And then of course there's a lot of other elements of it that we have to navigate daily. Our costs of the kind of things we need for the farm. That's one thing we're trying to figure out, how to get most of our inputs from the farm itself. But it's a long process and learning to get there, so that we don't rely so much on outside inputs and prices. Labor is another thing, and I think working regeneratively, we care about giving fair and living wages. So that cost is really high, but we kind of see that as a really important part of if we're going to be successful at this, we need to have the right people and we need to pay them right. So that said, we haven't paid ourselves anything yet in 3 years of working here.
How common would you think that is, Aaron, Carly, knowing your peers? How common is that to not have any salary?
Very common.
Very.
Yeah. I think it's like, especially with new and young farmers, and we kind of knew that coming in, that there would be a few years of not being able to take a wage, and hopefully with time we can have enough of a profit margin that we can pay ourselves something. But that's where it kind of depends on some outside factors that are out of our control too. Weather being one of them, the changing climate, I guess. And of course the kind of Canadian economy, the global economy, a lot of things that are hard to predict when you first buy a farm, and you kind of have to navigate that as it comes. So definitely those are some of the biggest stresses financially. I'd say, I don't know, is there anything you want to add?
Well, we have lots of plans and projects which all cost a lot of money, but it's to make everything more efficient on the farm. But it's trying to find the balance of, trying to put money into the farm to get a better return, but you got to really build up. And I think we thought, in a few years we can kind of start to see these changes and turnarounds, but it's definitely a marathon, not a sprint. And it's kind of like a few steps forward, and then a bad year for weather or grasshoppers or a mudslide, and then you get set back again. And so you just have to, it's this constant thing that you're battling, and kind of an uphill battle all the time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We like to operate, even we have to take out a line of credit. And so that kind of helped us get through a portion of the year and start making sales from that year's fruit. And then we're just hoping that the yield and the sales are good enough to get us through the year. And I think in part that has to do with the result of that is good. It has to be good farming. That's going to, and the more we know this and understand this, the better we can understand how to have productive and healthy trees. But yeah, then there's some other kind of unknown factors. We never really know how many people are going to show up to a market. It could be a really rainy day, and that market day could be a slow day. And then your sales are down. So you kind of are susceptible to some outside factors like that. And it does, like, at times feel like a major weight on our chest, like constantly worrying about money. It's, I don't want it to be. We never went into this because of money or to make money. And so to find ourselves kind of worried about it is not very fun. But yeah, and I kind of think like it's important for us to always try and find a way to not let that stress get the best of us.
Mm-hmm.
That's something we even today we're put to the test with. Well, it's like a daily thing sometimes, feels like, but yeah, trying to carve out time for each other, and sometimes that's hard to do when you just feel like you're in survival mode. Yeah.
And again,
That's like,
how common would you say this is, knowing your peers and the kind of conversations that we have with each other?
I don't know a single farmer who doesn't feel that way in our
Me too.
valley. Anyways, and everybody's gone through it in different ways, or they kind of tackle it in different ways. And depending on kind of how long you've been farming, maybe you learn how to cope with it a little better. But we still have friends who have been farming for much, much longer than us, and they still have times and periods where it's really tough that way too. So yeah, I don't know if it ever goes away, but maybe hopefully we can learn to cope with it better. Yeah.
Or hopefully something is going to budge with the kind of work we're doing right now. And hopefully advocate for, policy and stuff. We'll get to that part, but I just want to name that I see Alix looking very familiar and empathetic and smiling on her little Zoom tile. So yeah, thank you so much for sharing. And I just wanted to give you folks some space and time with that question, because it's just so paramount, and it is exactly as Zsofia says, nothing to do with bubble baths or taking time off Instagram. It is a major elephant sitting on your chest. So yeah, thank you for sharing so generously. I really appreciate it. And Zsofia, I wanted to ask you, I'm sure you've kind of had some basic understanding, or maybe a lot, as you went into this project, but I was wondering if there was anything that was really surprising to you about the financial realities of farming life and how it's affecting farmers' mental health. And what do you think is the most important thing for the general public to understand about the financial pressures faced by farmers?
Yeah, I mean, it's a really good question. Actually, I would say that the thing that's the most surprising I learned just recently from this book called Eroding a Way of Life, which I had, but now I don't have because I moved rooms. It's by Murray Natil, and it speaks about the changes in grain farming in Saskatchewan. And that the cost price squeeze has been known to the federal government since the 50s or before. And I was shocked, because I was like, hey guys, there's this really new thing that this is happening and farmers are really struggling. But it's like, no, it's actually, I mean, the more I think about it, the more I realize that it's just actually baked into our capitalist system of farming, that it's you have pressures on both sides. And which is why collective action from farmers was so important after World War II, advocating for the wheat board, advocating for supply management, because they understood that in the face of these growing giants in the food system, their collective voice together was the only way to sort of balance out that power. And so one of the reasons we are seeing a resurfacing of this is because through neoliberal policymaking, these have been attacked and eroded. So yeah, so that's I guess was sort of an awakening. And for the second part of your question, I'm just going to read it again. I think what's important for the general public, I mean, I think the empathy that's needed, because I hear a lot of people now and again talk about rich farmers, and it's just so flippant and it's so rude So, and it hurts me so much, knowing how hard farmers and farmer folk work. So, but basically just listening to the lives of farmers, I think, is the most important thing. So I'd also really like to thank um, you guys for sharing your lived experience with us. I think it's really important to know.
Thank you so much. So yeah, this kind of leads really well in some of the really poignant testimonials in the chat about family and relationships, because this is a big source of mental health support, but it can also be very fragile. And so, Erin, in recent conversation that we had, you mentioned that starting Snowy Mountain Farm while trying is kind of like trying to jump onto a high-speed train while simultaneously learning a lot of new skills and problem solving and trying to make a living. I was really struck. I was like, I think a lot of farmers can really identify with that analogy. And I was wondering if you would be willing, you and Carly could share a little bit about how that high-speed train has challenged your ability to sustain family and social relationships. And in that case, where are you getting support for your mental well-being?
Mm-hmm. You want to take this?
Yeah. No, the train analogy, I don't know when we started talking about that, but it kind of, we woke up the very first morning with this farm and it feels like it's never stopped. And while you're on this high-speed train, you're having to, you have some skills coming into it, but you're learning things on the fly and you're met with challenges all the time. And it's this constant thing that never stops. And, the trees are always going to need water. The chickens are always going to need to, need food. And so it's this constant thing you have going. And when it comes to having a family and and working with a spouse, I think I'm really glad Erin and I had a good solid base before we bought this farm, but because it is divide and conquer a lot of the times, it's passing ships a lot of the times because there just is so much to do all the time. And I think trying to learn that balance, and I mean, it's kind of what we're saying about financially, you kind of, instead of trying to, we've had to just, instead of change things, you have to just be okay with an ongoing list of things that have to get done that may never get done, and things that, all of a sudden you think you're at the top of your priorities and then another thing goes to the top and then that gets bumped down the list. And to have that pressure always on, you kind of just have to learn to roll with it and know that there will always be a list of things to do every day. But when that comes to family life, I mean, when we got the farm, we kind of knew certain roles that we would do, but I think when you're thrown into things, I mean, we kind of played to our expertise. Like Erin knew more about the actual farming of the trees and stuff. So he would take more of that, but that became a constant thing. And then I was left with other things in our lives that you just have to do. And I had quit my job to have the farm, and we never really knew what our definite roles were. You just kind of had to just like in survival mode. And so I think that has put a bit of a strain in not knowing what's overlapping and what, I mean, do I love having to do all the pickups for kids during the middle of harvest time? No, but someone has to do it. But the apples need to be picked too. And it's just trying to learn as you go on this train that never stops. I think we've now with 3 years, we are starting to fall into different roles and what we like and what we don't like and what we're better at, but we're still, like we said today, still learning what those roles are. And we were talking about before about other farmers in our valley. I think for a sense of support, and I hate using this thing, but it's this misery loves company. It's kind of like, at least we're not alone. Like, I think our first year here, we didn't see a lot of people because we were just so overwhelmed by everything that had to get done. And I think we were trying to do it all in one season, which we realized right away was kind of impossible. And we have a lot of other farmer friends here, thank goodness, who are like, guys, like, you're gonna just need to, you know, go with the flow. And we've gotten a lot of you know, counseling from them, and just even just support, friendship, and just knowing that we're not alone, and other people are in the same boat dealing with the same weather issues. And there's some comfort in that. And even if they're not, you know, giving us this like, you know, life-changing advice, just hearing other old-timer farmers sitting in the cafe complaining about the weather, it kind of makes you like, yeah, this is really hard, and they can understand. And just having people around us that understand it too is nice. And I think other ways of support that we look to, I think it's just Aaron and I have to take time to just get away from the farm, even though we feel like we can't, like we really shouldn't all the time. Sometimes even just going and working a market together. So we have a 4-hour drive there to talk, and without looking at the farm out and all the lists of things we need to do, you're in a vehicle, and that helps, even though we're still technically working. It's finding those little moments to do things. It's snowing here. We might take a ski day tomorrow because it's just a way to get off the farm and not being bombarded by all the other things that are going on here. So
yeah, I think getting off the farm is sometimes the only way to actually mentally rest from it. So we have been trying to make more of an effort to have days where we go with the kids or just ourselves, to you know, spend some time and trying our very best not to talk about the farm once, and focus on ourselves. And that's hard to do when you have this one side of my brain's always saying, oh, it has this big list of things that I know I need to do back at the farm. But when we actually do it, it is the only way we can really rest and be present with each other.
Mm-hmm. And I wanted to say, farms, we talked about this, are already, by just geographic, like they're isolating already, because they usually are an acreage and they're out in rural areas, and you're not seeing people walk by on the road all the time. I mean, we do have neighbors, but they're a few fields away or across the river. And we've found that it is still important, as tired as we are, to just, you know, come in and just not see anyone. And I mean, I also like to just have nights alone too, but to have evenings out with other friends and farmers, it's huge. And just an hour for coffee, I think we have to just keep remembering that, that we are not alone, because it can be a pretty lonely business. And if you get bogged down enough, you kind of forget that there are other people going through the same thing, and other people who want to talk with you and help, and just converse.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. That's great. And I know what you mean about the never-ending to-do list and trying to get away from it. I just downloaded this morning before I started, because I have full-time work and I'm also trying to start my farm. And this was the to-do list. Makes no sense. Can't, right? And like, I'm supposed to do this on top of full-time job to pay the mortgage. So I fully empathize. One part of you is just at all times consumed. Yeah, it's really great. And thank you for explaining about expanding the sense of family to the farmers and the folks in your community as a source of strength and support. It's really beautiful. Zsofia, I was wondering if you would be able to expand a little bit, like talking about rural areas and depopulation and decline, basically in the social infrastructure of rural areas and social polarization. And I just wanted to frame that question with a little quote from the mental health organization that you had cited, Do More Agriculture, where the founder talked about having an event for farmers to talk about mental health. And it was in Edmonton. It was a 400-seat venue. And she thought maybe a dozen people would come. And it was standing room only in a 400-seat venue in Edmonton. And she said people were even sitting in the aisle, and they were standing along the back. we asked the question, any of the farmers know someone who's died by suicide? A loved one, a community member, a fellow farmer, and almost it chokes me up, almost the entire room stood up. And she said, I cried almost that whole panel. So I
Yeah.
just wanted to give folks in the general public a sense of yeah, what's happening in these rural communities.
Yeah. So I
and
almost
Joseph,
start
if you
crying
could-
too, thinking about it.
Yeah,
So I'm laughing because makes me, nervous to sort of, anyways, it makes me, it's very heartbreaking. And so one of the things about that quote that's so important is that it was to illustrate the fact that the scope of this problem is so huge and it's so untalked about. And so for those who aren't familiar with Do More Ag, their really big mission is to get farmers to talk about farmer mental health, because if you look like before 2018, it was almost like nothing. There was very, very little. And then it kind of just, the conversation just started on Twitter, and then it just kind of grew from there. And it's like one of those things where everybody knew somebody, 400 people, and but nobody's talking about it. And I also really point the finger at the government, especially Statistics Canada, and they don't collect this data. They have every other measure of how farms are doing except their mental health. And it's so when I started my own research looking at some other stuff about mental health, I emailed like a dozen different organizations before it became clear that this was just not something anybody was talking about. And it is a political thing to collect that data, because it shows you if there's a problem, and it's definitely intentional, in my opinion, because other countries have that data. So in terms of rural decline and social polarization, it's a related but also a sort of separate issue in itself, because the rural depopulation is taking on this new, like it's increasing. It's becoming more rapid as farms consolidate again in order to stay viable. They're on this treadmill of just trying to stay farming, and then more and more acres are going towards grain, and this is especially where I focus my research is in prairies in Saskatchewan. And so through my own separate research for my dissertation, I would speak with farmers and they would say, just heartbreaking, like the schools are gone, the kids are gone. There's like one farmer said, when I was coming up, there would be 30 people on the farm next door, and now there's nobody. And if your truck breaks down, you don't know how long you have to walk before you see somebody. So immediately you have this breakdown of social cohesion, because people don't necessarily see each other. They don't know each other. You might have bigger farms will have farm workers who don't necessarily live in town, or they don't live on the farm, but they live in town. And then with that, you have the unfortunate economic decline that comes with it, both in reduction of taxes, the tax base, but also you just have less people buying things in your economic centers. So then you have a decrease in ancillary and core health services. And then sometimes governments do things like in Saskatchewan where they decide to get rid of their bus service that connects rural communities. So there's policy at the government level that has definitely facilitated this hollowing out of these rural areas. And a lot of it is because of the changing industrialization of farming itself. And so polarization does result from declining, research shows, from declining economies and services, coupled with a sense of political marginalization and feelings of loneliness. So these things sort of contribute to what's known as geographies of discontent. And unfortunately, there has been, through the discussions with farmers, they've discussed a rise in right-wing populism, which I think a lot of us are seeing. The news, maybe some of us are seeing this in their community. Some of the things, yeah. So very, very scary, very, at times we need to be paying attention to this, I think. And so the issue of polarization is a new issue for me, but my postdoctoral research is going to be looking at how polarizing communities impacts on agricultural farmer mental health. So like communities, like, because that's one thing that came up in these studies was people talking about how it stressed them out. So this is something that I'm going to explore a little bit further. Yes, I hope, did that answer your question?
It totally did. And I just hope for folks listening that you can see like the very elegant and clear links that Zsofia's answer was making to the individual experiences that Erin and Carly are talking about. It really is quite an intricate web that is under a lot of pressure due to, in many cases, policy decisions, that really hollow out and weaken rural life and supports and structures that would make farming life a lot more sustainable and enjoyable. If there were, for example, local schools and community halls and local jobs and people who own their land and, can weather bad weather and other ups and downs and marriage stresses by having a stronger kind of foundation and social base. So yeah, thank you so much. Where our conversation is so rich, we are a little bit behind in terms of the question. So I have some questions about climate change, but I was wondering, Zsofia, if you'd be willing to give the second part of your presentation, and then we can just see what
Definitely.
questions we, yeah, okay,
Yeah.
let's do that.
Let me just find my notes. All right, I'm ready. It's not going to be very much. It's short. Hold on, now let me just find you. Okay, so.
Sorry, can I just ask you, who is this wonderful looking farmer?
No, I got it from, I have the link. I forgot to put the link on the thing, but it's from a news article about some farmers in the States.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah.
That's great. If ever you find it, send it to me, because
yeah, sorry, I was
an
like,
interesting person.
I know, that's why I chose her. I was like,
oh, Genevieve shared it in the chat if anybody's interested.
Oh, thank you.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I was like, that person looks cool. Okay, so we're gonna talk a little bit about policy and action in farming that we discussed through the NFU report. So I did most of the NFU, I did most of the report, but when it came down to the policy and recommendations, I got input, it was really a collaborative effort from two really important key NFU people, Kathy Holtlander and Darren Qualman. Just so much information, they know so much. And so I feel very strongly about these recommendations. And I'm just so grateful for their input and support to this project. But anyways, without further ado, these are our recommendations. I hope you can read those okay. So I'm only going to really speak to the first two in detail, but briefly, we made 6 general recommendations, and focusing in on any of these recommendations needs to just have the caveat that farming is a very heterogeneous field. It's different across sectors, but even within sectors across areas. So it requires further consultation. But I do hope that, one day policymakers will look at these. So the first recommendation is to implement policies that will enhance economic stability for farmers and farm workers. The second is to continue to, and I'm just going to list these and I'm going to talk about the first two. The second is to continue to enhance supports to farmers transitioning to sustainable farming practices. The third one was to include food sovereignty in the federal goals for agriculture. Fourth one was to rebuild rural infrastructure. The fifth one was to address ongoing discrimination and violence in the farming sector. And the sixth was to expand access to mental health care for farmers and support existing farm organizations who are doing that advocacy and research. So although I talk a lot about upstream and larger structural changes, I do think it is still important to not leave people behind and still give supports in mental health services. And especially make sure that they are catered to farmers. A lot of mental health services could just be in general. And farmers talk a lot about how like they don't want to have a meeting with the counselor who just tells them to take a vacation because they don't know the realities of farming. But then also making sure that these capture other groups as well, including Black, Indigenous, and to spirit LGBTQ plus members of the farming community, because I know it can often seem that there's a homogeneous white population, and that's not true. So having supports that recognize that diversity is also really important. So I'm going to talk again a little bit about just the first two recommendations. There's no special slide. I'm just going to talk a little bit about it, but I've talked a lot about how economic instability creates a lot of stress. So naturally, what we recommended is focusing on policies that enhance economic stability for farmers. So these include policies that address key things like the cost price squeeze, commodity volatility. So commodity volatility, especially from trade agreements and very huge other thing, corporate concentration in the climate crisis. So one example would be having stronger competition policies. And I know that the Competition Act was just actually strengthened as of December of last year, but it has yet to be seen if that actually has any meaningful impact. There are farmers calling for the reinstatement of, for example, Alberta Pork want to come back to supply managed systems. Some farmers and other related groups want the wheat board back. So these are entities that, in short, manage supply, or they do collective buying. They provide a bit of economic stability to farmers. So that's something that we recommend, is to at the very least, deal with the corporate concentration. And again, these are very sort of high level discussions of these, because they would look so different in different places in Canada. The second recommendation is to address that issue of climate change. So you can go to the next slide. Next one. There we go. Yeah, thank you. So I was talking a little bit about agroecology. And now I'm not an expert in agroecology. There's lots of researchers who are. So I'm just going to give you sort of a brief overview of it. And the reason I bring this up is because addressing the climate crisis will require how we rethink how our food system operates. So including shifting majority of our current production away from the industrialized food model that we have towards one that's underpinned by beneficial management practices, and that prioritizes sustainability and environmental health. And so agroecology is an example of this. It harnesses existing ecological interactions to promote crop productivity, soil fertility, and biodiversity without the use of external inputs such as fertilizers. So in this way, it significantly reduces greenhouse gas emissions, but it also has been shown to increase the adaptiveness and resilience to climate change at the same time. So if you see on the next slide, the International Panel of Experts of Food put together this report that sort of just highlights some of the benefits of agroecological farming has had, including less crop damage, less soil erosion, more if their farms are increased resilience, sustained and improved yields, improved livelihoods, increased food security. So it's quite good. It's just as labor intensive, and it also flies in the face of a lot of our current agricultural system, which is why if you were to walk up to, maybe Agri-Canada or, they might just be like, oh, we're not, like, people aren't necessarily interested yet. But I think that there is a shift, and we are, in the report, we are seeing the Canadian government actually invest some projects looking at agroecology. And so we commend this and want it to continue for sure. Yeah, okay, so that is it for me from now. Well, I guess that's it for me from now. This is what we can do now but I think maybe you asked this question later, but since the slide's up, I'll just say what I would, what I recommend. And what I really recommend if you want to help farmers in general is to join the National Farmers Union. You can join as an associate member. You don't have to be a farmer. And they're having a union, a member drive right now. So I think your membership is 50% off if you're a first time member. And they do so many wonderful campaigns, letter writing campaigns, educational stuff. They're great. And I think that the other thing, in the spirit of supporting farmers, signing up for a community supported agriculture box is one other great way. But yeah, I've spoken enough, so thanks. I will pass it off.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I think that one of the words that came up relates to a question that Alix asked about collaboration. So I'm gonna fold that into a question soon. I think, let's see, also, well, not too bad for time. So yeah, maybe I'll just backtrack a little bit to climate change. And I was wondering, Erin and Carly, if you could share examples of how climate change and climate unpredictability is impacting your orchard fruit and wine grapes. Because you shared that you're using strategies such as vegetative cover, no-till, compost, mulching, reducing your outside inputs. You referred to that, rotational grazing, encouraging biodiversity. These strategies, as Zsofia pointed out, are often very labor intensive. And even though you're playing a long game, you're trying to build strength and resilience into your farm, you're definitely, though, hanging off that high speed train while you're trying to do it. And so I was just wondering if you could speak to whether these strategies and investments you're making are enough to mitigate climate change effects that you're seeing in the present day.
Yeah, I don't know yet if I can say that it will entirely. I think for it to really be fully effective, it has to be adopted by many, many farmers. It's hard to have just individual farms here and there that are practicing this because climate change is such a big problem and requiring many, many more farmers to adopt it. And I do see the hopeful thing is that I see a lot of momentum with regenerative practices. And I think as many scientists are beginning to show not just that it's better for the environment, but that it's actually better for soil health, better for yields. There's like so many benefits. I think this is gaining a lot of traction, and that's a really hopeful thing. But yeah, I think like from our perspective, there's a few things. We have a climate here that's extremely, it can be quite cold in the winter and very dry and hot in the summer times. And that seems to be going to unpredictable extremes in recent years. We've had the first summer we moved to the farm, we had a heat dome with 10 days straight of 45 degrees, and the valley had never seen that before. And it completely dried all our cherries on the trees, and had obviously pretty bad effects. And I think things like drought can be mitigated through vegetative cover crops. If we're able to preserve water, I think water is going to start becoming a big issue. And in BC, we never used to worry about that. But just last year, we had our very first water restrictions in the valley. It's just always been abundant here. And now we're starting to see water tables dropping. And so it has to be adopted by all in order for us to really reduce water usage. But cover crops are an essential part of if you have a cover on the ground, your precipitation your evaporation and water loss is going to be much lower. And then that also has just other benefits like carbon capture, and so again helping with climate change. So that's one way. And we have, I mean, I could probably talk endlessly about, we just had like 2 winters in a row with record extreme cold, and it's the whole wine industry and grape growers are really panicking right now. It's just like just happened a couple of weeks ago. We had -29, which most vines that are grown here can't survive. So now the discussion is maybe we should be planting different varieties that can be more adapted to this climate. Then I think that is maybe part of the solution. And then again, the kind of farming practices are going to play a role too. But yeah, that's I guess, like, as far as climate change, that's probably does that answer the question?
Oh, totally. No, it's awesome. And actually it kind of brings to mind, sort of jumping forward a little bit to the policy section of my questions. Zsofia, your recommendation number 2, continue and enhance supports to farmers transitioning to sustainable farming practices. I'm wondering, in terms of my question around climate change, I was wondering, Zsofia, if you could talk a little bit about that, about, responding to this volatility of climate change and the financial pressures on farmers in terms of this policy solution. Like, these are practices that are very labor intensive that Aaron and Carly are adopting out of their own pocket, out of their own wisdom as people who are working the earth, looking around and saying, we really need to do something so that we can still keep feeding people when it's -29 and then 45 degrees Celsius, which is mind-boggling, but it's a very personal struggle. And I'm wondering, from your end of research, what signs do you see of policy being a tool to gain support for these practices?
Policy is everything at this point. Like, if you had the government be like, here's a bunch of money to do this,
right?
I mean, my God, if you're worried about people being like, it's just, there's people who want to go work on farms, but they're worried because when we spoke to the NFU, sorry, I'm just like in a tizzy, but the NFU also has the NFU.
Girl, bring that tizzy. We need it.
So the NFU youth talk a lot about, they're millennials wanting to build a farm, just like anybody today who's younger who can't buy a house. So the thing is that there's so much uncertainty associated with farming, and there's so many people who do want to do it, that a lot of people are making the choice not to do it, is what I'm getting at. So if there was some kind of supports from the government to include to shift to this, that would be huge. There'd be so many more people, meaningful support. I mean, this borders on, even just like, one of the reasons why I go back and forth on basic income is, if we did do a basic income in agriculture with a lot of caveats that other supports weren't retracted, you could have the foundation to build regenerative agriculture. I mean, I personally think that everyone should just have money and nobody should justify themselves anyway. So let them, don't be means tested and just give people the income they need to live. But I just think that this idea of farms individually switching to regenerative practices is, again, focusing too much on the individual, that we need to find ways together to force a structural change, that this is an easy thing to do. And honestly, I feel like we're going to have to force their hand, because when we have huge crops, monocrops failing because of climate change, or we're going to have to, and like water and drought, it's just going to become unsustainable. And I'm from Vancouver, so when you talk about +45 and -29, it like shatters me, because it was always 2 degrees to 29 degrees my whole life. Like, that was the range. One more thing is that I think it's also important to understand and to not, there's a difference between climate change adaptation and mitigation. And I think a lot of parlance on adaptation sort of makes it seem like something's happening, but all adaptation means is there's a drought. How do we plant something that can deal with that drought? Rather than mitigation is like, how do we stop this from happening? And I really think it's important to keep that focus on mitigation, because you can adapt, but it's still going to change, and then you're going to just get it harder and harder to adapt. Thank you for my little soapbox.
Oh, totally. And Carla, I wonder if you wanted to jump in. Zsofia, you had mentioned guaranteed basic income, which I'm guessing probably a lot of people are familiar with, but just a strategy that there would be just a minimum that farmers' incomes, for example, and this has been done with lots of different communities as far back as the 70s. It's often been shown to be very successful strategy for social support and economic resilience for people and community health. There's just a lot of benefits. I'm thinking specifically in agriculture. And I know, Zsofia, you had been involved in that report, Agriculture Case for Basic Income. I'm wondering, Carly and Aaron, if you could speak to what this would mean on your farm, if you knew there was a minimum base that you couldn't fall under as farmers.
Yeah, like it would be huge. It would be like I
don't mean to
think,
laugh. I'm just that would change everything.
yeah, I think
Sorry, just to say the relief shining off your faces just at the thought.
Our
is
shoulders
quite
just
kind
lifted.
I know, you can see you breathing. Like, yeah, okay.
it would be, yeah, it would be amazing. It really would be. Like, and how much, I don't know, like that's maybe relative to people's needs, and that would be a really difficult, that would require probably a lot of data, understanding how much, but I do believe that would be extremely helpful. And I've thought about this, especially with regards to regenerative farming. And I have seen more and more, we apply for a lot of funding, and that's because we need it, and
as much as we can.
And I've found that lots of the focus on funding in BC is starting to move towards more environmentally sustainable practices, and in many cases giving money to adapt to take on some of these practices that are in regenerative farming. I've been able to apply and get some funding for cover crops and for new seeds and trials on that. So and then equipment to do it, equipment for compost. Like there is work for money out there, and it makes me at least a little bit hopeful that if there's an understanding on a government level that this is better for the future and for the environment, then we, having something like a basic income, even if it's specifically for anyone who wants to do regenerative farming, it could be both good for the environment and I think push a lot of farmers to, or give them the kind of confidence to do this kind of farming. Because I think I haven't met hardly any farmers who wouldn't want to do something that is shown to them to be healthier and better for their soil, for their farm, for their crops, but making that leap without any guaranteed income like that I just can't see too many people doing that when they've already kind of are settled in a certain way of doing it, and they're already on razor thin margins. It's who's going to want to take on
more work,
and it could mean the difference between losing their farm or not if it doesn't work out. So that would be huge, I think. Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you for that heartfelt testimonial. From these lips to the policymakers' ears and typing fingers. We have about 11 minutes left, and I was wondering if we have a few more questions. I actually could just sit here all night and ask you questions. This is really wonderful. But we do have a couple of questions in the chat. One, I think, is a really lovely question. I don't know that anybody can answer it right now, but it was Katie Fettis who was asking about whether there's been any research to show a correlation between using agroecological practices and better mental health, like if there's been a direct correlation. feel like that would be a very cool research topic. I don't know, Zsofia, if you have any intel on that.
I haven't come across that, but it is a really interesting question, especially
Yeah.
given the data of what the IPES showed about increased livelihoods and sustainability. It's getting me thinking. But I do want to say that a colleague of mine is doing a mental health look on the connection between mental health and soil health, which will be interesting to see what she finds. So
Lovely.
I love any approach to looking at this that is sort of not just focused on resilience or self-care. So yeah, so keep these. And I'm gonna put my email in the chat also. Not that I'm like want to steal your research ideas, but these are such great things and great ways to think about stuff. So yeah, send me your research idea.
Awesome. And then one question I wanted to pick up from the chat from Alix, a fellow farmer from Regen Canada team. And this actually kind of speaks to, I had a question about what's giving you hope and energy for the way forward. And one theme that has been kind of being woven through some of the conversation is collaboration and connection and community support. And Alix's question was, can you speak to if or how integrating collaboration into farm operations, such as through collective marketing initiatives or cooperative farm structures, can enhance farmer well-being, especially for small and medium-sized farms? I don't know if Carly and Aaron, if you have come across any collective or collaborative strategies. I know it's hard when you're in survival mode and hanging off that train to think in those terms, but maybe if in little ways has this come up in your journey?
Yeah, I mean, we are part of a collective in the Lower Mainland, and so we bring some vegetables and produce from these farms to the market and help sell their produce there, and then they also help sell our fruit at their CSA, or provide it as part of the CSA. So that's really useful in that sense. But I think as far as like mental health and collaboration, I mean, we had talked about this before, as far as like customers and having this kind of, I guess the CSA is one great way to do it, because it's this collaboration between customers and the farmer working together. You're providing, usually it's a way that someone can pay in advance for a bunch of produce or fruit for the season, and then it helps the farmer economically early on in the season when you usually need it the most, and then you can be providing that fruit throughout the season. But it's
literally helping each other put food on the table.
Yeah, it's like and that, just having that kind of just knowing that is something that's already there in place for us is really important. It helps us, sigh of relief a little bit, because we know that there is some income coming from that, and that's a pretty steady. It's there as long as you still got to grow the fruit and hope that all works out. But yeah, and as long as and that kind of collaborative aspect is a constant conversation. It needs to be constant conversation where people understand what it takes to put food on the table that is that's healthy and that's good for the environment, and good to put in their bodies. It's a lot of things, and requiring that back and forth, that conversation. I don't know if that answers it, but yeah.
Yeah. And then, I mean, CSAs, that's one way. And our relationships with our regulars at the market have really been great for us. Probably like when we go to the markets, we come back a little bit more refreshed, because we've had people bring their families, and these are the farmers that grow your favorite apple that you like. And those little moments, and knowing that these families are going to come back every week for us, like they've kind of said, like, we are here every week for you guys, kind of thing. That's a collaboration in itself, I guess, just because we kind of have this knowing that we have, because markets can be unpredictable sometimes, but there are those loyal customers that know us, we know them, and we're thinking of them when we are, farming, and they're thinking of us by just coming to the market and buying our fruit. So, yeah.
I love it. Thank you. And I'm wondering if you, yeah, so go on, Aaron, please continue.
I might add one thing, as far as even the word collaboration, it gets my mind going a bit, but I have been talking a lot with farmers in our valley about ways that we can work together, because it's hard to do these, to be a small business owner, but it feels like you're an island to yourself. And if we can be a more collective force, I think it's good in a number of ways, both for marketing and selling your food, but also I think it's when it comes to policy and having a louder voice. And we've all been thinking about, trying to break away from a lot of the typical ways that things have been done for so long. It's especially true here in our valley, where a lot of people have to sell their fruit through the packing houses, and the packing house and the grocery stores end up being the decider of the prices and hold all of the power. All the farmers get paid next to nothing for fruit. It's like 40, 50 cents a pound, 60 cents, depending on the varieties. And that makes them have to grow way more. And it's exactly what you were saying before. And then the varieties are limited to what the grocery store wants. So it kind of reduces biodiversity. And I really think if a lot of people were able to come together and collaborate to almost have our own version of a packing house where it benefits the farmer, that's like a huge, I just think about that all the time, and what a change that would be. And I guess it's just coming down to like having business that benefits the farmer and not the large corporation like Save On or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jim Pattison.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
She hates Jim Pattison. I don't know if she's watching, but anyway, yeah. That's
Zsofia, do you have any closing words that you'd like to share just about, sort of where we've come to in the conversation in terms of, collaboration, policy supports for the type of approaches and work that Aaron and Carly are doing, and that the farmers you've interviewed?
a lot.
We've gone through a lot of terrain in this conversation.
I guess the thing that I want to reiterate is that when you're in the grocery store and you're angry about prices, it's not because the farmer is making too much money or even getting that money at all. So keep your anger focused on those points of power. And in terms of collaboration, if you think about sort of like our own power, is the only power some of us have when we work, for example, is to withhold our labor, and that's why we strike. You can't really do that with the food system or the farming system, but I do think that it is really important and essential to support the kind of cooperative movements that farmers have been behind, including marketing boards or supply management sectors. And like what you were saying about having like a packing house, like that's an example of how you can kind of wrest that control back. So yeah, and in terms of closing thoughts, I just want to say thank you for farming in a system that's designed to sort of exploit food from you, the lowest possible thing, and you to all the other farmers here. I'm so indebted to you. So, and again, so thank you and also for having me here share with everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you
Yeah.
for having us too.
And I just want to like resume in the last like 30 seconds or so, just to say in terms of like one of my questions at the end was going to be what's giving you hope and energy for the way forward. And I feel like you've both really embodied both, you know, from the researcher side, from the farmer side, you know, clearly drawing a lot of strength and energy from, well, from respect and love for the earth itself, joy in nutritious food, and righteous anger at a very, I wouldn't say broken system because it's working as it's designed to. So a very corrupted system. And
Yes.
I,
Such an
right?
important point. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not broken. It's working as it was supposed to.
Exactly designed.
Exactly as it's designed. And I think that it sounds like all of you are getting a lot of energy from connection and from working together, and also the joy of sharing food and having people reflecting back to their appreciation, the joy of listening to farmers and reflecting back policy recommendations and appreciation for their efforts. So I just want to reflect back that gratitude to all of you and to everyone who joined this call and this chat that has been really lit up with appreciation and interest and poignant sharing. And I just want to really thank Regeneration Canada for making this possible today and for inviting me to be part of this really important conversation. So yeah, much gratitude.
Thank you so much. So much gratitude right back at all four of you, really. Thank you so much to Carly, Erin, Zsofia, Angel. I know as a farmer, I'm really so pleased to have had this conversation take place and really look at some of like the root causes and talk about the concentration of power and yeah, that we're in a system that's really stacked up against us. And that's why it's so hard. We're having a pretty natural response to our environment, right? So yeah, and also that there's a lot of great solutions that were brought up. It's great. And I hope that we can continue to have these conversations and yes, so thank you so much.